WuDon could not sleep because the earth would not stop talking. She lay on a mat in Pognazada's safe house, the packed earth floor cool against her back, the amber fruit cold and heavy between her breasts, and the root lines beneath the building hummed with a frequency that vibrated in her molars and the small bones of her feet. The city's baseline noise had not quieted with nightfall. If anything, the darkness sharpened it without sunlight to scatter the frequencies. Every enchanted object in Ironhaven broadcast with a clarity that made her skin prickle. The ward-sealed doors whispered. The shadow bindings flickered. And below it all, the corruption's sour pulse beat like a second heart beneath the city's foundations, slow and sick and patient. She was afraid. Not the clean fear of the Guardian's chamber, where terror had been mixed with awe and the communion key had turned danger into passage. This was a smaller fear. Dirtier. The fear of a girl from a village who had never been to a city, who had traveled through the earth's body and emerged in a place where every surface carried magic she had not been trained to read, who was being asked to do something tomorrow that her master, a man of 40 years' discipline, could not do and survive. Full aperture communion. The words sat in her chest like stones. Kofi had explained it that afternoon, in the courtyard, with the flat precision of a mind that had been broken and rebuilt around the system's knowledge. The candidate had arrived from the east on foot, as WuDon had predicted, a young man whose body carried the particular exhaustion of someone who had walked through the ash-veiled depths and emerged with his sanity reorganized rather than intact. His clothes were cave-stained. His eyes held the layered focus of someone seeing on multiple frequencies simultaneously. And his mind, when WuDon's communion brushed against it through the interlocked fragments, felt wrong. Not damaged, rebuilt. The way a broken pot mended with lacquered gold feels wrong. The shape is correct, the function is restored, but the seams are visible, and the gold catches light in places where clay should be dull. Kofi's consciousness had been disassembled by the protocol and reassembled around an architecture that was not human in origin. He thought in frequencies. He perceived in geometric patterns. He understood the Zagale system with an intimacy that was beautiful and unsettling in equal measure. The intimacy of someone who had been taken apart and put back together by the thing he now understood. She had expected to flinch from it. She did not. Her grandmother, Apoka, had kept a bowl mended with river clay on the highest shelf in the compound, a bowl that had been her own grandmother's, cracked in a storm, repaired with such care that the mend lines became part of its beauty. Broken and remade is still whole, Apoka had said. Sometimes the breaking is what lets the light through. Kofi's mind let light through. It was just not light WuDon had ever seen before. His plan was elegant and terrifying.
The prescribed convergence is trapped. He had told them. The 4 fragments in Pognazada gathered in the courtyard, as evening reddened the sky above Ironhaven's roofline. Tohage has built his cage around the Zagale's own design. The 4-fragment harmonic, the simultaneous activation the failsafe requires, is exactly what his capture web expects. He has calibrated his trap for the prescribed sequence, because the prescribed sequence is the only activation pattern the system's architecture supports.
A pause, the kind of pause that holds a blade.
So we give him something the architecture does not support.
The duet. Not 4 fragments activating simultaneously as the Zagale designed, but 2 pairs activating in sequence, WuDon and Zuera first, communion and encoding flooding the chamber with omnidirectional frequency before Azindo and Kofi followed with the bond and the reformed key. The trap could not capture what it was not calibrated for. The cage could not hold a shape it did not recognize. But the timing required WuDon to open her communion channel before the alignment peaked, before the trap activated, before any protection existed except the communion key's anchor and whatever depth she could hold, while the Zagale's full frequency surged through her body like lightning through a rod. "When do I open?" she had asked.
When I signal you, Not through the system is compromised. I will create a signal outside the established frequencies, something Tohage has never heard, something so deep the trap cannot classify it because it was not calibrated for frequencies that should not exist.
And when I open, how wide?
Full aperture, maximum depth, everything you have all at once.
The words had landed in the courtyard, like a death sentence spoken gently.
She had looked at Samini. The old Tindana's face had carried an expression she would remember for the rest of her life, however long that turned out to be. The expression of a teacher hearing his student's death described in technical terms by someone who did not understand that the technical terms contained a person.
Full aperture, Samini had said, his voice the texture of scraped wood. The Zagale's frequency passing through a human body. You understand what you are asking her to do.
I understand what I am asking her to survive. Kofi had replied. The communion key protects her consciousness. Her body will conduct the frequency. The cost.
I know the cost. WuDon's own voice cutting through, surprising herself with its steadiness. Every grove in the territories will feel it. 47 nodes blazing simultaneously. The frequency will come from everywhere. The trap cannot capture omnidirectional input because it was designed for a point source.
Yes.
And the cost to me will be physical. Bones, blood, nervous system. The communion key keeps my mind. It does not keep my body.
Yes.
She had looked at the courtyard floor, at the root lines pulsing faintly beneath the packed earth, at her hands the split palms, the burst capillaries, the hands that had already paid in blood for every depth she had reached. I will do it, she had said. Now she lay in the dark and felt the fear of it. Not the doing, the choosing. She had chosen to enter the Guardian's chamber. She had chosen to ride the root road. She had chosen every descent, every depth, every moment where the earth opened beneath her and she fell forward instead of pulling back. But those choices had been made in motion, carried by momentum, each one following so naturally from the last that choosing felt like flowing. This was different. This was lying still in the dark with the knowledge of what tomorrow would cost and choosing it anyway. Choosing it with her whole body, a body that was already cataloging its damages, already calculating what it could survive, already knowing that full aperture communion would add to the ledger in ways the previous entries had not prepared it for. The door opened. Samini.
He did not speak. He crossed the room in the dark. She heard his staff tap once against the floor, his bare feet on the packed earth, the rustle of his smock as he lowered himself to the ground beside her mat. He sat with his back against the wall and his staff across his knees, and in the faint amber glow of the root lines bleeding through the floor, she could see his face. The gray, the deep lines, the eyes that were wet and unashamed. I will anchor you,
He said. Kofi said, there is no role in the duet for a Tindana master without a fragment.
Then I will create one.
His voice was quiet and absolute, the voice of a man who had finished deliberating.
You channel the Zagale's frequency through your body. The communion key holds your mind, but your body will need to be held. Someone maintaining physical communion contact, wrapping their depth around your frame like hands around a candle in wind, keeping you together while the force passes through.
It could kill you.
Many things could kill me. Old age is currently winning.
He did not smile. The words were not a joke. They were a man's way of saying, I have considered the cost and I am here.
I trained you, WuDon. I brought you to Sunyani. I broke my oath. I rode the root road. I watched you descend into the earth and bargained with every ancestor whose name I know for your safe return.
His voice cracked, mended, cracked again.
I am not letting you channel the Zagale alone.
The tears came without permission, hers and his. She reached for his hand in the dark and found it waiting warm, rough, steady as stone, the hand that had corrected her posture and guided her communion and held her shoulders when the earth pushed her back to the surface bleeding and gasping. She held it the way she had held the amber fruit in the guardian's chamber. As an anchor, as proof that the surface existed, as the single fixed point in a world that was about to become a river. Samini.
Yes.
Thank you for training me, for breaking your oath, for all of it. His hand tightened on hers.
You were the reason the oath needed breaking. The grove went silent, and you heard what I could not. You were always going to end up here. I was just the one who walked beside you.
She pressed her forehead against his knuckles. His skin smelled of shea butter and wood smoke, and the mineral residue of the root, the scent of home, carried through impossible distances. The scent of the man who had been her teacher and her father figure and her anchor for 2 years of pre-dawn training and 3 days of descent into the impossible. Below them, the guardian felt their communion through the root lines. WuDon felt the response, not words, not frequency, but the specific, terrifying, beautiful weight of trust. An ancient being placing its survival in the hands of 4 strangers, a marginal candidate, an oath-breaking master, and a plan that deviated from every design the guardian had spent millennia maintaining. Trust, the act of faith that says, I do not know if this will work, but I believe in the people attempting it. She received the trust, the way she had received the guardian's first message in the bones, in the body, in the place beneath language where truth lives before it learns to speak. She slept. Briefly, shallowly, her hand still holding Samini's, the amber fruit cold against her chest, the root lines humming beneath her like a lullaby sung in a language older than sleep. She woke before dawn. The alignment was coming. She could feel it, a tightening in the network, a rising pitch, the root lines vibrating with increasing intensity as the cosmic configuration that the Damba festival celebrated began to lock into place. The sealed nodes were resonating. The dark groves were brightening. The system was preparing itself for the moment of maximum connection between surface and depth, the annual instant when the boundary thinned to nothing and what was sealed could be opened or sealed anew. She dressed. She checked the fruit still cold, still pulsing, its rhythm faster now, matching the alignment's accelerating approach. She checked her hands, the split palms had closed overnight, not healed but sealed, the body's emergency repair, buying time it might not have. She stepped into the courtyard. They were all there. Azando, his shadow coiled tight, the diagnostic array already reading the alignment's approach. Zuwera, her encoding frequency humming at the edge of perception, the ancient patterns she carried vibrating in sympathy with the network's rising pitch. Kofi, still and focused, his reformed mind already calculating the duet's timing with a precision that was not human and not inhuman, but something between, something the protocol had made. Pognazara, the earth bonded, standing at the courtyard's edge with the bearing of a woman who had seen this alignment 43 times and had never once seen it with this much at stake. And Samini, standing behind where she would kneel, his petrified staff planted in the earth, his hands empty and ready, waiting to hold her. She knelt. The packed earth was cold beneath her knees. She placed her palms flat on the ground and felt the root lines surge, the network responding to her touch with an intensity that made her gasp, the system recognizing its listener and clearing every channel, opening every node, preparing itself for the flood she was about to release. Below, the guardian compressed its vast consciousness into a focused force. She could feel the gathering, the attention narrowing from 47 simultaneous node connections to a single, directed surge that would travel upward through her body when she opened the channel. The guardian was afraid. She could feel its fear, ancient, structural, the fear of a being handing its survival to a woman it had known for 3 days.
Samini's hands settled on her shoulders, his communion wrapped around her warm, steady, disciplined, not deep enough to follow where she was going, deep enough to hold her while she went. His fingers pressed into her muscle. His breath was warm on the back of her neck. His fear was a physical thing between his palms and her skin, and his love was larger than his fear, and both were real, and both were the anchor she needed. I am here.
He said the same words she had said to him when she surfaced from the guardian's chamber. The same words returned, a circle closing. WuDon closed her eyes. She felt the alignment approaching hours away, then minutes, the network's pitch climbing toward a frequency that would open every sealed boundary in the territories. She felt the corruption below Tohage's trap, calibrated, waiting, a cage built around a prescribed sequence that she was about to render obsolete. She felt the other fragments through the interlocked connection, Azindo's shadow coiled and ready, Zuera's encoding humming, Kofi's reformed mind counting down to a signal that would come from below the system, from a frequency the trap could not hear. She felt her own body. Small, breakable, human, 20 years old, from a village where her grandmother ground millet and hummed and read the future in the lines of her palm. A body that had already bled for every depth. A body that was about to become a conduit for a force that was not measured in human units. She breathed, 3 counts in, hold for 2, 3 counts out. The cadence Samini had drilled into her bones on the first morning of her training. The fundamental practice, the conversation older than language. The earth was listening. She could feel it waiting patient, vast, ancient, holding its breath the way the whole world holds its breath before rain. She was ready, she was terrified, she was choosing. The alignment neared. Samini held her, the guardian gathered below. And Wunam the listener, the girl from the village, the woman who heard what the world forgot to say, placed her open, scarred palms against the earth, and waited for the signal that would ask her to become a flood.